Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Poor People's Campaign. We are excited to have you all. We have a little media call here for you to give you some information about what's going to be happening next week in Texas. So I'm going to introduce you guys to Bishop Barber, who really doesn't need any introduction, but so he can go ahead and get us started and let us know what's going to be happening today and who you'll be hearing from. So Bishop Barber, whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. And let me just say, this is not a little media call. This is a big media call because this is about some serious stuff that's going on. I want people, first of all, thank all of the media for coming on and all of our partners. I'm Reverend Dr. William J. Barber, the second bishop with the College of Affirming Bishops in this country. On July the 12th, the Poor People's Campaign, a national call with moral revival with 15 partners, started National Moral Mondays in Washington, D.C. The 12th, this past Monday, nearly 100 women from all over the country, poor and impacted, and others were arrested for nonviolent civil disobedience as they were in D.C., demanding that the Senate and the Congress and the President act on the issues facing us now as a nation. This coming week on the 26th, we'll be in 45 Senate offices, 45 states, visiting Senate offices all over, asking them, do they support four specific things? If they do, we'll be celebrating that. If they don't, we'll be challenging that. But in the midst of all that has happened, Texas is like the canary in the mine. And the Texas state legislators, those who believe in justice, decided not to act like Democrats or to act like Republicans, but to act like statesmen and stateswomen. They could not go along with what was going on, and so they left the state. In the midst of that, the Texas Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival, sent out a call. They contacted the National Poor People's Campaign, a National Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival, and sent word to Liz and I, asking if we would come to Texas and speak with people and to meet with other Fusion Coalition partners to organize a historic Selma-like march from Georgetown, Texas to Austin, a moral, nonviolent, direct action march for democracy. They called We Are the Moral Resurrection. And this will happen on July the 27th, will be the first prayer rally. And then the morning, and then the Wednesday morning of next week, we will start marching to Austin. And then on July 31st, at the state capitol, there will be a mass rally. This is a mass rally where the speakers will be poor and low wealth, impacted people, moral and religious leaders and advocates, not politicians, but those who are impacted, those who are moral leaders, and those who are advocates who do not currently hold political office. The march design is to nationalize the actions that are happening in state legislatures in the state of Texas and in others, to say very clearly, as Selma to Montgomery said in 65, we must have federal action. And we are calling on the United States Senate and the President to act by August the 6th, the anniversary of the signing of the Voting Rights Act. And we demand that Congress act now to stop the attacks on democracy. How? By ending the filibuster, not just carving it out, ending it. Number two, passing all provisions of the For the People Act. Number three, fully restoring the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And number four, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And even in this time, lastly, we want to permanent protections and dignity and respect for all of our undocumented immigrants, especially our DACA brothers and sisters. This march and this gathering is to connect the dots. The purpose is to say that the same forces of regression and greed that seek to suppress the vote in Texas and all over the country, and especially in the South, those same forces are suppressing passing $15 a living wage, suppressing addressing poverty, suppressing healthcare, suppressing climate issues, suppressing just immigration reform, and suppressing utility needs. We are coming this March to say this is not Jim Crow, pure. This is James Crow Esquire. Because when you look at what these bills are doing, especially in Texas, it will hurt Black people, and brown people and white people and Asian people and Native people and poor and low wealth people and women and the differently able and young people. And we must connect the dots in this moment and have a moral fusion response. And we're saying in this action, we must have federal action. It's not the For the People Act or restoration of the Voting Rights Act. The truth is, if a politician is holding on to a non-constitutional filibuster to block protecting the our constitutional voting rights, then they are choosing the side of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce rather than the United States Constitution. If a politician in this moment is saying that they will support the Voting Rights Act restoration, but they won't support the For the People Act, then they're playing the Washington two-step and they're attempting to trick the people, because the For the People Act was written by John Lewis. That's the one he wrote. States need federal protection. The For the People Act can address now the suppression bills being passed in state legislatures. The voting rights restoration can protect in the future through preclearance. But any politician that is trying to water down the For the People Act or offer the voting rights restoration alone is abandoning Texas and abandoning the South in general, and really abandoning the nation. Any politician who says they support John Lewis but won't support the For the People Act that he wrote is engaging in a kind of political distortion, refusing to pass the For the People Act and the Voting Rights Act and $15 in a living wage and end the filibuster and protecting our immigrant brothers and sisters. All of these things are constitutionally inconsistent, morally indefensible, politically insidious, and economically insane, and they are all connected. Dr. King said they were connected on the march from Selma to Alabama. He said that the reason people were fighting voting rights then is because they were afraid of the masses of Black people and the masses of white people coming together, forming alliances that would create voting power that would fundamentally transform the economic architecture of this country. So we cannot have this be just an issue for Black people or just an issue for some people. It is about race, and it's about class, and it's about demographics and geography. It's about all of us. And any politician that is holding on to the filibuster is abandoning the South and every state where extremists are trying to suppress the vote. Down through the years, the filibuster has never been used to bring people together. It has only been used to block civil rights, block anti-slavery legislation, block women's suffrage, block the New Deal, block living wages, block labor rights, block rights for our immigrant brothers and sisters. If a politician in the Senate is blocking the For the People Act, then that means they don't want federal standards. They don't want standards that guarantee same-day registration and early voting. They don't want to get dark money out of our election. They don't want the Attorney General to have as much power as possible to address the voter suppression. This march and gathering will tell the truth to the nation. And any politician or anybody that's supporting them that's blocking $15 a living wage is saying they don't care about the 32 million people in this country making less than a living wage. They don't care about the over 5 million workers in Texas that make less than a living wage. They don't care about the 12 million poor and low wealth people in Texas and the 1/3 of all poor people in the South. This march is to demand and call out for federal protection and to look at the connection. This is not a time for politicians to be moderate, but this is a time to mandate protection for the people. It's not a time to bow to extremists who are afraid of all of the people voting. It is time to pass what is necessary to ensure that everybody's vote is protected and engaged, and that we have a true democracy and not a civil oligarchy that will lead us into possibly an autocracy. This is why we march. We are the resurrection. We are the moral resurrection. Reverend Liz?
Thank you so much. My name is Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris. I'm the director of the Cairo Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice, at Union Theological Seminary, and I'm the co-chair alongside of the Reverend Dr. William Barber of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. We're gathered here today, as Reverend Barber was mentioning, we're calling for this march from Georgetown, Texas to Austin, Texas, launching next Tuesday, July 27th, marching Wednesday, July 28th through Friday, July 30th, and then processing with caskets and hearses representing the voting rights and economic and civil rights being killed by the filibuster, by the failure to pass all the provisions of the For the People Act, for the failure to restore the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and so far the failure to raise the minimum wage to a $15 an hour wage. We're doing this march into Austin on Saturday, July 31st, because we know our democracy is indeed in peril. In this time when our voting rights are under attack and economic justice is being denied, we are calling out the immoral obstructionism of Congress and demanding that the U.S. Senate, the President's office, and all of Congress and the filibuster pass all the provisions of the For the People Act, fully restore the 1965 Voting Rights Act, raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, and we're also calling to restore DACA and all the necessary protections for immigrants. I'm a pastor and a theologian as well as an organizer, and I hear the cry of the prophet Isaiah, "Woe to you who pass unjust laws, who deprive the poor of their rights, making women and homeless children their prey." I lift up the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who just this week has been removed from the required curriculum in Texas public schools, who says, "So long as I do not have firmly firmly possess the right to vote, I do not possess myself. I cannot make up my mind, and it is made up for me. I cannot live as a democratic citizen, observing the laws I have helped to enact. I can only submit to the edict of others." As a leader amongst many leaders in the Poor People's Campaign in Texas and across the country, as part of the 140 million people who are poor or one emergency away from economic ruin, 13 million of whom live in Texas, we are all too aware that the extremist politicians who are suppressing and stealing our ability to vote are the same politicians who are denying living wages, refusing to expand healthcare, exploiting immigrants and LGBTQ plus people and women. And so we are marching. We're marching for our children. We're marching for our elders. We're marching in Texas.
Thank you so very much, Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, and reminding us of those things. Also, as she noted, we will be in this march from Georgetown to Texas when we come into Austin. We'll come in with 151 cars as well, recognizing this is the 151st anniversary of the 15th Amendment, and with the hearse that will have in it all the bills from Texas and around the country that are trying to bury voting rights. We are very serious about this. When we come into the city of Austin, and what the symbolism and the substance of this says. And as we say from a moral perspective, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights. Woe unto those who pay attention to a lot of details, but they leave undone the weightier matters of the law, which is justice. And now at this time, we're going to have some impacted persons, because that's what's most important that we hear. The first is a white woman named Stephanie Swanson, who is with the PPC in Texas, and she's going to come for a minute and a half to talk about why she is so adamantly against what's happening across the country and with the demands that we're making. Stephanie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Swanson. I'm actually the co-chair of the Texas PPC, and I'm happy to be here today. So there's only so much we can take. We reached out to Reverend Barber because it's our responsibility to speak up and to speak loudly. And we know that the national campaign has that ability, and that's why we invited them down here. I myself grew up on the east side of Houston, very close to the Ship Channel. I actually had lung cancer at the age of 33. I live close to the refineries. So that's the reason I'm here today, and I'm with the Poor People's Campaign. I've been impacted directly by ecological devastation. And here in Texas, it just seems like every single day we wake up and there are more attacks on everyone across the state. whether it be immigrants, whether it be Black people, whether it be folks that need Medicaid expansion and access to healthcare, or anything like the eviction crisis going on in Houston and across the state. There's only so much we can take, and it's time for us to stand up and speak loudly against what's happening here.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, because indeed, those that suppress the vote also suppress our ability to deal with climate injustice, and we must stand together. We also have another person, Miss Danita Jones. She's with the campaign Impact. She's speaking from the perspective of a Black woman.
Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Danita Jones, also a co-chair with the Texas PPC. I come to you today not only as a co-chair for the Texas Poor People's Campaign, but also as an impacted person. I'm impacted because I've had to choose between doctor visits and feeding my family. I'm impacted because I've had to witness my friends lose loved ones during the snowstorm here. I'm impacted because I've had a job that let me go with no cause of excuse or reasoning behind it and left me uninsured. I'm impacted because my children and my family have been caught in the Medicaid gap because we make just $1 too much to be covered for healthcare. And so not only am I here on behalf of myself, I'm here on behalf of my community, those families and friends around me that are suffering the same suffering that I'm going through, the same struggles that my family are a part of. And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm standing with this group of individuals on this press call, because there's time for a change in Texas. And it has to, if it won't happen without elected officials, it will have to happen with us. Thank you.
Danita, you're so right, because everything you mentioned are matters of public policy. And when you have voter suppressors are the same ones that suppress health care, they're the same ones that during the pandemic that treated people like they were expendable. Policy, policy, policy. And you've told me over and over again, when folk want to suppress the vote, that's just another sign they want to suppress more things that happen to impact the people. It's time to stand up. And then we have Reverend Stephanie Wilkinson, who is a clergy person and also speaking from that perspective.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. I am Reverend Stephanie Wilkins, and I am part of the Texas Poor People's Campaign. And I come to you impacted in a number of ways. As clergy, I do work in the community, and I do hear from those community members about the issues that they have where they cannot find food. There's food deserts. They don't have access to adequate health care. They can't find a job. There are those who have been incarcerated and still cannot find work. But I also want to talk from a perspective of a personal impact in that when we were dealing with a pandemic in February, we were hit with something that leveled the playing field for everybody. And we had a winter freeze that impacted people in their homes, but also those people who were unhoused. There were a lot of people who had to suffer outside trying to find a way inside, and to then find out that it was because of a power grid failure, and you have an elected official who's not even trying to deal with it, but going on a trip to warmer climates. This was something that impacted people no matter their age, their status, their race, or their gender. Psalms 14:6 says, "You would confound the plans of the poor, but the Lord is their refuge." So we are here as the Poor People's Campaign, and we are saying that you've got to give us what we are due. We have a right to live. We have a right to have adequate health care. We have a right to have the $15 minimum wage so we can take care of our needs. Stop trying to suppress our voting rights and start working on that grid and working on economic justice for all. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard you say a number of times how bothered you are that folk would be trying to suppress the vote rather than fix the grid. We'll try to suppress the vote rather than pass the legislation. But
stop suppressing the vote and start fixing the grid.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We also have Rabbi Steinman, and I met her. She's a powerful rabbi, and certainly has a perspective as a Jewish person of what happens when you start seeing people running roughshod and literally suppressing, where money and meanness rule. Rabbi, would you speak to us now?
Thank you very much, Bishop. on behalf of Temple Beth Shalom, we are delighted to be in partnership with each of you in support of this march and in support of this vital work to make sure that we are living the words of my tradition of the Hebrew Bible, that we are making sure that we are caring for all of those in need, especially those whose voices are dignified and made stronger and louder. And so it is an honor to be able to do that with all of you and to join together in the march that we know will have so much impact, and we hope to make greater change in our city and in our state and in our country. Thank you, Bishop.
We are the resurrection, the moral march and direct action from Georgetown to Austin, demanding, end the filibuster, pass all provisions of the For the People Act, pass the full Voting Rights Act restoration, pass $15 minimum wage, and pass immigrant justice and protect our immigrant brothers and sisters. Lastly, we have, no, not lastly, we also have Karen Bell, who's an, Karen, would you come on now? And say
yes, thank you, Reverend Barber. I'm an impacted person economically and also with healthcare. There's a person in our house that has fragile health, and so we are very restrictive in our activities, and the legislators here in Texas that have wanted to push us back into public has threatened the safety of my family. In San Antonio, we've had 3,500 deaths from COVID. Mm. I'm also impacted economically in that I lost 2 jobs. I had to have 2 jobs because I was not paid a living wage at either one, and both of them disappeared during the pandemic. And so I stand with the Texas Poor People's Campaign.
How do you feel when you see these people who are working so hard to try to keep from voting rather than working hard to make sure they're living jobs in Texas and that people are lifted up? In your gut, how does that really?
I'm angry.
Yeah.
I am very angry. And as Stephanie mentioned, it's about time that we stand up, we make some news. We're tired of fighting for our dignity. We deserve it.
This is a march about dignity, and it is not an end, you all. I want the media to know on this August 2nd, after the 31st, clergy and low-wage workers will meet in Washington, D.C. for moral direct action, a mass of clergy and mass of low-wage workers. We're not going anywhere. Somebody's hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long, and we can't be silent anymore. Geneva Wadsworth, Colbert, is an impacted person, and she has a word for why she is going to be joining this march and joining this mass rally. Geneva?
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Geneva Wadsworth Colbert. I stand up here in Houston, Texas, and across the nation. I pray for all of the partners on this line. I face the impact socially, politically, and honestly, it's a humanitarian issue now. I'd like to have an end to the criminalization of the homeless, the criminalization of those with mental health disabilities. I stand with Poor People Campaign, Texas, across the nation. I pray across the world to end right now this filibuster, to pass all provisions for the pass all provisions of the For the People Act, pass a fully restored and expanding Voting Rights Act, pass a $15 minimum wage, and restore the rights and protections for immigrants under DACA. Let me state that one of my mentors was the former activist Maria Jimenez here in Houston. Yeah. Maria infused me with whatever gifts I have now. And one of the things that she shared with me when I went to her to solve my problem was, Nia, don't agonize, organize.
That's
Thank
right.
you
That's right.
for having me today.
Thank you, Nika. We're going to take that for the march. Don't agonize, organize. They don't agonize. Then we have Diane Ramirez, who's with Workers Defense, is speaking on behalf of impacted person with Worker Defense. Diana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Ramirez, and I am the Civic Engagement Director at Workers Defense Action Fund. We are a membership-based organization dedicated to building power for immigrant families and communities of color in Texas. We have strategically focused on organizing construction workers and their families to fight for better working conditions, because we understand that to build political power, we must build worker power first. The Latinx community is the rising electorate in Texas, and our representatives are threatened by these shifting demographics. The anti-voting bills proposed by state lawmakers will only make it harder for our communities to vote. Our pathway to citizenship, to a living wage, and to a safe workplace depend on our access to the ballot. Our communities are building Texas and this country. It's time that we build a better future for them. We need Congress to act now.
Thank you, Diana. I like that. That's simple. We need Congress to act now, right? No more waiting, now. Jason Lee, with Texas Right to Vote, is going to speak to us now from that perspective. Jason.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. Texas Right to Vote is a coalition of community leaders, elected officials, grassroots organizers who've been fighting to expand the vote to all Texans and fight against voter suppression. We've organized, and along with a coalition of organizations and faith leaders in the state for months during the regular legislative session, and again now during the special session, telling lawmakers that voter suppression bills have no place in our state, in our democracy. Voting rights advocates in our state will continue to sound the alarm about the restrictive and racially discriminatory voting laws being pushed in Texas. We'll continue to fight against these voter suppression bills in Texas while our legislators are in DC fighting to expand voting rights at the federal level and eliminate the filibuster to do so. We're on the front lines of this fight, and our energy has inspired our lawmakers to take this bold action. And that's why we're excited to participate in the Poor People's Campaign and the march in reminiscence of the Selma to Montgomery March, but bringing it here to Texas. And we are honored to stand alongside all of you as we continue to lift up this issue and demand all the things that we deserve as it relates to voting rights and higher wages. So thank you.
Jason, you're a powerful young brother, man. Hear of your work all over the place. And thank God for you. And you know, you said reminiscent, you're exactly right. In '65, it took a march from Alabama to move a president from Texas and a Senate that was filibustering then. Look how history's turned around. It's now going to take this march in Texas, this action in Texas, direct action in Texas, to move a filibustering Senate now and a president from Delaware. But if we do this, Texas is going to have mimicking all over the country, and that's what's going to happen. Now, we have other partners. I don't necessarily like to say national partners because we believe in nationalizing state movements because, you know, change doesn't come from DC down as much as it comes from Montgomery up, from Austin up, from Greensboro up. But these are some tremendous partners who have reach all over the country and the world. And the first one that's going to come now and is endorsing, and we were glad to join them last week, is Dr. Frederick Haynes, Reverend Dr. Frederick Haynes of Friendship West Baptist Church, and the chair of the Proctor Conference. Powerful brother, my mentor. I thank God for him every day. Dr. Haynes.
Thank you, Bishop Barber, and thank you to all of you who are a part of the Poor People's Campaign. Your work is indeed invaluable. I'm pleased to be a part of this coalition of conscience, what I'm calling a moral army, Bishop Barber, which is determined to fight neo-fascism and the war on democracy and truth that has been declared by the ideological relatives of the seditionists who tried to overthrow the results of a democratic election on January 6th. We cannot be appalled by the violent attempt to cancel the last election based on a lie and not be against the betrayal of democracy that is seen in voter and truth suppression efforts. And so I'm standing with the Poor People's Campaign as chair of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, also as the social justice co-chair of the Progressive National Baptist Convention. And we are invoking the liberating legacy of those who prayed with their feet, to use the language of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and marched from Selma to Montgomery and arrested the attention of a nation, resulted in America becoming, in 1965, finally a democracy for all through the right to vote. And so I'm simply saying we're going to remix Moses and declare to the pharaonic suppressors of the right to vote, let our people vote. Pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill and the For the People Act. Let our people vote, and we'll become a nation truly one with liberty and justice for all. Let our people vote.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haynes. And you know, as you were talking, I think people need to get the memo. We ain't gonna wait 2 years this time like it did happen Juneteenth.
No way, no way.
It's
That's right.
now. It's got to happen. And Texas is the place from which to change the whole country. I'm glad that there's a man on this line tonight, to this afternoon, who is not an elected politician. Now, I'm not, he didn't get, maybe he will be later, but right now he's just like the rest of us. And therefore he can be a part of this effort, needs to be a part of it, wants to be a part of it. And that's none other than Beto O'Rourke. Would you share with folk why you're joining in this grassroots effort at this time?
Bishop Barber, I'm happy to. And I want to thank you and the Poor People's Campaign for your focus on Texas, because this is the epicenter in the fight for the right to vote. We have the toughest voting and election laws in the country, bar none. It is tougher to vote in Texas than it is in any other state. And as every other speaker has said, that is connected to the fact that our minimum wage in Texas is $7.25 an hour. It's connected to the fact that we are the least insured state in the country. It's connected to the fact that we are on the front lines of climate change. We listened to a speaker who grew up next to the Houston Ship Channel. Those communities are bearing the brunt of our inaction and our excesses and our lack of political participation, especially by those who are impacted the greatest. But beyond producing the most restrictive voting laws, Bishop, Texas has also produced everyone that we just listened to on this call. And they're the ones that give me hope, that make me know that we will pass the For the People Act. Texas is produced the state legislators who are in DC right now, breaking a quorum to stop suppression at home and providing the moral leverage on the United States Senate and our president, who must do more to ensure that we have voting rights passed this summer. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing and tell you that I proudly stand with you, and I'm looking forward to joining you.
Thank you so much, Brother O'Rourke. Thank you so much. And indeed, all people must do more. This is not something that you can't choose to build up the infrastructure of bridges and then let the infrastructure of democracy be torn down, because no one has the right to deny or abridge our right to vote. And of course, that bridge is connected to all other public policy. I skipped Brother Crafton. I hope he'll forgive me, Brother Crafton, with disability right. It was unintentional. Brother Crafton, would you talk to us as an impacted disabled person why you are, and then I'll come back to our other speakers to finish us out so we can take questions.
No problem. My name is Ron Cranston. I am with ADAPT of Texas. I am with the Personal Attendant Coalition of Texas and have been involved with the Rev Up Texas campaign, which is to register, educate, vote, and use your power. Under the current problems here with suppression that has been guided by a very misleading bunch of Texas legislators, my ability to vote has been subdued, basically. It would be subdued. Not only have I had to register just to receive a vote at my home as a person with a disability, it is going to be subdued if drive-in voting with support, which I use every day of my life, which is vital to my existence. If that happens further, I'm in trouble. My democratic ability to use the power of our nation's Constitution is going to be limited. And frankly, the other parts that affect me within the campaign for poor people is that the minimum wage in Texas for people who come into my home to assist me every day, primarily women of color for the last 45 years, is presently only assured to be paid $8.11. That is a disgrace.
That's right.
People cannot live on $8.11. I cannot hire somebody for $8.11 an hour. This is a travesty. We have literal skin in the game. This is tenement to people dying in nursing homes. I live in the community. I want to continue to live in the community. I want to continue raising my grandchildren. I want to be a vital part of my community. And I want to thank you, Reverend Barber, all of the people of Poor People's Campaign for including people with disabilities in the march that will upcoming and making sure that the federal folks that represent us know that they have to stop this filibuster, work on these issues that have been vitally named and given in this press conference. I want to thank all of you. We are all one, and God bless us all.
Brother, you know, Brother Cole, you just said some things that I hope the media hears. You see, if you pass the Voting Rights Act, which is not even written, it doesn't protect people like you, because you've got to have the For the People Act to make sure that they don't remove the things like drive-in. And the only way you can do that and mail in, you have to have the For the People's Act. So it's not either or. It's not either or. And we wanted to put a face on this, members of the media, who would be hurt if we allow folk to filibuster and not pass the For the People's Act and let these state legislatures like in Texas continue to do what they're doing. This is not just Jim Crow. This is James Crow Esquire, and we need to be talking about the full breadth of people that will be hurt in what's being done now. And if we do this, we make it a moral constitutional issue, right, and we can in fact win. Let me call out our next. Thank you so much, others that are coming. I want to have at this time Julio Acosta from Border Network, and then following him will be Bishop James Dixon. Will come at right in behind each other.
Thank you. My name is Julio Acosta. I'm with the Border Network for Human Rights, which is a membership-led human rights organization that focuses on immigrant rights. Border communities and communities across Texas already face many challenges to exercise our right to vote. We believe that having a voice in how we are governed is a human right. We proudly join with the Poor People's Campaign and all that champion the protection of our sacred right to vote. We need to continue fighting to ensure that all elected officials be champions for we the people. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you. We're right there with you, and thank you for the work you all do. Bishop Dixon.
Yes, sir, Dr. Barber. God bless you, Bishop, and thank you for your stellar leadership, lifting this issue from the political to the moral and the spiritual. I believe that your leadership, along with the collective leadership that's on this call, a part of this movement, is absolutely essential. So I greet you from the Kingdom Builders Global Fellowship, of which I am the presiding prelate, as well, of course, from the NAACP as the NAACP president here in Houston, Texas. And I am honored to be a part of this team. In the words of my cohort and co-laborer, Dr. Frederick Haynes, this is a moral army, and it is building. We've got to continue to do this because we're speaking truth on behalf of a God who created us all in his image and in his likeness. And each one of us are equally valuable. However, the skewed vision and perspectives of those who are in places of political and economic power continue to undermine the godness about all humanity. And poverty is reinforced by public policy. And what happens in Texas, as well as in America, we create policies that perpetuate poverty, and then we criminalize the poverty that we create. Let me say it again. We create public policies that perpetuate poverty, and then we criminalize poverty, which is why mass incarceration is fueled by poverty and by a lack of education. These are all legalized policies. I want to say that these are legalized policies. Just because something is legal does not make it moral.
That's
and
right.
What we're attempting to do in Texas, as with the other 47 states that are adopting these voter suppression laws, is to legalize discrimination. And that is immoral, according to Isaiah chapter 10 and many other prophetic passages. And so we are coming together with collective potency. We are committed to a prophetic word, a prophetic work, and prophetic witness, because that's our assignment today. And I'm thankful to you, Dr. Barber, and to all of us who are part of this, because we are bringing light into darkness. And I think that needs to be said. We've got darkness in leadership. And when the deeds are evil, when the thoughts of evil, when the ideas are evil, they're coming out of a dark place. There are those who think that only a small group of people deserve to prosper. And we've got to continue to sound the clarion call. I'll wrap up on this, Dr. Barber. When I thought about this last week, as we were marching in Austin together at the state capitol, I thought about the fact that the hands of slaves built the Capitol building in Texas. Think about that. We were on the grounds where there are Confederate statues still on the grounds at the state capitol. There is a messaging that's continuing to reverberate throughout Texas. The fact that our textbooks are being eliminated, Dr. King is being eliminated from our textbooks, and this whole issue on the issue of race theory. I want to say this: if the church does not march now as one unit, we will lose this democracy into the hands of those who are led by dark motivations. And so I close on this note. We must let our light so shine, whether that's in Austin, whether that's in Washington, D.C. We're galvanizing, we're organizing, and we're mobilizing, because the truth of the matter is, it's in the voice of the prophet that liberty comes. And we must speak prophetically, we must work prophetically, we must walk prophetically, and we're going to war prophetically. When the insurrectionists stormed the Capitol on January the 6th, they left the spirit at the Capitol that we're going to go against when we go to Austin, and then when we go again to Washington, D.C. I think that this movement is a God movement, it's a now movement, and for such a time as this, God is organizing an army that's black, white, brown, that's tall, that's short, that's rich, that's poor, who's going to speak truth to power. And we decree and declare victory is already on our side, because God said to us, He is always on the side of the oppressed and the poor. Thank you so very much for allowing me this moment. And we speak from Houston, but we speak for those of us who follow around the nation. Let freedom ring in the voices of the prophetic who show up, who speak up and stand up, because this is our time to lead our people up. Thank you very much.
Amen, Bishop. And we thank God for all your work. We thank God for all the churches that God has allowed you to lead. And I was thinking how people make policies to hurt the poor, and then they want to block the poor from voting because they know that the poor would not stand for it. But there is an army. It merely needs a sound. And we're coming in that perspective. Thank you for raising that. This has to be a moral issue. Every major move in this country, nothing happened until it was fundamentally seen through the lens of being a moral issue that pulled together a fusion coalition of people. And you're exactly right. We've already won. That's why they're fighting so hard, because they know the possibility of when we come together. So let's realize their fear. And maybe in the process of realizing some people's fear, they'll actually get redeemed and maybe come on and join the side of justice and love rather than staying on the side of meanness and hate. Barbara Arwine with Transformative Justice Coalition, and then Barbara Arline, my dear sister, Bishop Tavis Grant with the Rainbow Coalition, and then Latasha Brown, Latasha Brown, that sister. I was just looking at her last night on Joy Reid. She's a bad sister, and we want her to, and then we'll take questions from the media. Barbara?
Yes, the Transformative Justice Coalition is a national organization that works primarily and principally on voting rights. And as many people know, we have been organizing throughout the nation. We had 150 cities that turned out on May 8th in a major demonstration in support of the For the People Act, DC statehood, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. We just Saturday had candlelight vigils, and we're so proud and appreciative of you, Reverend Barber, and everybody who participated, all the groups. We had 155 cities who held those candlelight vigils. I mean, big cities and small cities, and they are gorgeous. I've been looking at the pictures, and we are so appreciative. And those candlelight vigils were in honor of John Lewis on the first anniversary of his passing. And one of the big chants we had was, "We are John Lewis." One of the big chants we had was "Free to Vote." One of the big chants we had was, in our lifetime, we know that we got to get this work done, and we are committed to it. We are honored to be part of the Poor People's Campaign to help in this endeavor. We will be coming to Texas. We will be activating our supporters and members in Texas, because Austin, Houston, Dallas all had candlelight vigils, and so did Plano and some other places throughout Texas. So we are going to make sure that our supporters also are there. And Daryl Jones, who's my co-leader, who's also on this call, and I are coming. We will be there.
And you're teaching, and you got a role. I need you and Caitlin at the rally. We're going to have a section for you as lawyers to teach us, because a lot of folk don't even know what's in these acts. Right? Even the media doesn't know, right? And they don't know the impact. So we need your legal mind to literally, because part of prophetic work is prophetic inquiry and unpacking. So bring on your professorial hat and your activist lens as well.
Well, thank you, because of course, I teach, from at Columbia and at UCLA.
That's right.
And that we also, when I was at the Lawyers Committee, we wrote the National Voter Registration Act, helped the Congress to write that act. We also did all of the field hearings for the 2006 reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. And so we have a lot of legislative experience.
That's right.
And passing this and working on these on legislation in this area. So thank you so much again, everybody. We are so honored to be part of this effort because we got to fight back. We're not going to sit down and let this happen. We're going to fight.
That's right.
And win.
And win. That's right. It's different when you fight and you fight and win. Bishop Grant, we know that you're coming, and Reverend Jackson just got the major award over in France. You're his field director. Rev is an elder, but he ain't a quitting elder. But you are a powerful young brother. Bishop Grant, tell us why Rainbow Coalition is joining this work as we do it together on this massive historic march from Georgetown to Austin.
Well, Bishop Barber, we certainly appreciate it. We're excited. Reverend Jackson is looking forward to supporting all that you do and all of these freedom fighters. We must protect the right to vote. We must work for it. We must march for it. We must fight for it. And when necessary, we must go to jail for it. It is immoral for 1% to rule 99%. And as Dr. Freddie Haynes has outlined, this moral army has the strongest soldiers in it, the unemployed, those that are low to no income, those who are part of the underclass. And this is not and it's our time to raise the moral standard, to redeem the soul of America from the streets to the suites, from the factories to the farm. This is not an insurrection. This is a people's resurrection. Waiting is not an option. This is our time to do it. We cannot go back, forward ever, backwards never. We're with you 100%. Let's make it happen.
God bless you, Bishop. God bless you. Latasha, Brown, you've been right there in Texas on the ground. Black Voters Matter. Come on and talk to us about why we've got to all come together in this moment and demand both things, all these things be done. And we can't afford to have the Congress or president or anybody not acting in this moment.
Bishop, I think we lost.
All right. Well, let me go to Ms. Swanson. Let me go to staff. Excuse me. Yes, Ms. Swanson. Quickly call out all the other partners. Some of them we didn't have on the line. We know we couldn't have everybody speak today. Would you give us a rundown, and then we'll take questions from the media?
Sure. So our on-the-ground partners in the state include Border Network for Human Rights, Reform, Immigration for Texas Alliance, the Texas AFL-CIO, the Workers' Defense Action Fund, Next Generation Action Network, LUPE, which is La Unión del Pueblo Entero, Wilco Patriots, Nonviolent Austin, Personal Attendant Coalition of Texas, Adaptive Texas, YWCA, Greater Austin, Faith Forward Dallas, Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas, Community of Faith in Houston, Temple Beth Shalom here in Austin, St. James Episcopal Church, also in Austin, another St. James Episcopal Church, Beta Psi Omega Chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, Clean Elections Texas, Austin Airwaves, Our Vote Texas, Texas Drought Project, Anti-Racist Coming Together or ACT, Round Rock Black Parents Association, Interfaith Action of Central Texas, St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church here in Austin, ECLA, World Hunger and Bread for the World, St. Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Church of Georgetown, Coalition Against Pipelines, the Congregational Church of Austin, Coalition Against Pipelines, Pax Christi San Antonio, Unit Here, Local 23, About Face, Veterans Against the War, and that's the South Central Texas chapter. And that's it.
We also have Wheeler Baptist Church.
Wheeler Baptist Church, great. As you can see, members of the media, this list is growing and growing for the Georgetown-to-Austin Moral Nonviolent Direct Action for March for Democracy. We are the moral resurrection. When we open on Tuesday night with our opening worship prayer service before the march and press conference, we will talk about the significance of Georgetown. Why Georgetown? And why those 30 miles from Georgetown to Austin? We'll be walking every day for a minimum of 4 hours a day, being COVID safe and because of the heat. And then on Friday, we'll get close to Austin. Then on Saturday morning, 151 cars representing the 151st anniversary of the 15th Amendment, the Protect Voting Rights, will leave Austin led by, Georgetown with a hearse that will have on it and in it the copies of bills that are trying to bury democracy and therefore bury policies that would lift the poor and lift those on the margin. It will drive slowly, it will get in front of the marchers, and it will come into Austin. All of us will follow in. We're inviting everybody who believes in nonviolence, everybody who believes in justice, everybody who believes in the people's movement. If you can't do the march or portions of the march, 27 miles, join us for that Saturday morning for a massive gathering as we speak from Texas. All of us can't go to DC like the legislators. All of us can't go like those that have joined on tomorrow Monday, but we can send a sound from Texas to say to the Congress and to the president, you must act now. You must act now. We must end this filibuster. We must pass all the provisions of the For the People's Act that John Lewis wrote. We must have the Voting Rights Act fully restored and expanded, and we must pass $15 for our poor and low wealth workers across this country. Now, members of the media, you can ask questions to anyone who's on.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can bring you on audio, or you're welcome to put it in the chat. As of now, I don't see any questions at the moment.
Just make sure to remember to state your media affiliation as well, please.
This event has been recorded and we will send it out to media as well. And all of you all who are on the call, you can get a link Brother Haynes, I'm calling people brothers, all right, isn't it? Brother Haynes, Brother Beto, Brother Dixon, Brother Julio, everybody, you can get a copy of this and send it out. But we had our media on from AP all the way over. We had a large contingency of media this morning.
Excellent.
And folks can go to shortly this afternoon, the landing page action.poorpeoplescampaign.org already has the information for the upcoming Moral Mondays on July 26th and August 8th, and shortly all the information for this Georgetown to Montgomery, Georgetown to Austin March for Democracy will be on there as well, and places for folks to sign up, both for the big action and for the daily marches.
Actually, you may know that we're going to try to have many people cross-posting parts of the rally. The whole rally will be live streamed. I mean, the march will be live streamed every day. We will have cross-posting. We're going to be talking to C-SPAN, talking to networks about carrying it, actually having their cameras here. We tend to make a clear sound. Are we doing Maddow tonight, I believe? I think I got a call that she wanted to reach out to us, and so we'll be doing that, I believe, Brother Beto, together tonight. So this is serious business, you all. Frederick Douglass said it, and I close with this. When they were attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking every piece of anti-slavery law, and finally they had a Supreme Court to agree to the Dred Scott decision that no black man had no rights the white man had to ever pay attention to. And people thought the movement was over. They thought there was nothing else they could do. And Frederick Douglass stood up in May of that year and said, wait a minute. This is bad. In fact, it is monstrous. He said, but there is another side. And he made this quote, and I ask you to live with it. He said, every attempt to ally the abolitionist movement has only served to intensify and embolden our agitation. If in this moment, what is happening intensifies and emboldens our agitation, we not only have the hope of winning, we have historical facts that prove when the people come together and embolden their agitation and stand for right, we ultimately can push back injustice anytime at any point in history. And it's time for us to do that. If there's nothing else, Rob.
We have one more. We have a question from the Baptist News Global, asking if we are working with law enforcement on the route to ensure protection and safety of marchers.
Yes, we're doing that in a number of ways. In fact, the National Director of Safety and Security, Reverend Dr. Della Owens, is actually on this call. We're not talking about all of that, but you can believe me, we know where we are. We're deeply organized in that way to ensure the safety and protection. We have to expect that people will act out and jeer us. That's why we're saying clearly we are moral and nonviolent. We're not going to respond to that, but we certainly will have persons both visible and invisible or incognito that will be watching.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are looking forward to being in Texas this weekend and through next week. Powerful group of partners. Thank you for saying yes to this call. And we're in this together. So we say forward together, not one
step back.
All right.